the Signature Bank Studios.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Back after the election, you recall that Trump met with that grade school drama teacher that the Canadians made their prime minister, Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, he was on hands and knees with his tail between his legs going down to Mar-a-Lago for some reason.
Yeah, and this is how that meeting went, Trump doing the post-mortem on that post-election meeting with Trudeau.
Well, I just got done with a beautiful meeting with the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. He sits when he pees. He doesn't want you to know that, but he does it. Everybody knows it. But you look at it, I said, Justin, we're going to slap you so hard with tariffs. He said, sir, please don't talk dirty to me. You know I love being slapped. I said, not like that, Justin. We're going to hit you so hard with tariffs, and you're not going to know what hit you. You have to close your border. You have to help us with our border. He said, we're not going to do it. I said, okay, we're going to cut off your supply of soy. He said, sir, please don't do that. I need my soy. Justin Trudeau is the number one consumer of soy in the entire world. He consumes more soy than any nation or any man, anybody ever thought possible. He consumes so much soy. I said, Justin, you must take after your mother because Fidel Castro was definitely not a soy boy. He said, sir, please don't cut off my soy. Please don't hit us with tariffs. It's going to hurt our economy. I said, if that's the case, you could become our 51st state. He said, but sir, what are you going to do with all the moose? I said, I've been handling moose for a very long time, and we're going to change the plural of moose to mooses, by the way. I've been handling mooses for a very long time. Chris Christie, you may have heard of him. Stacey Abrams, Rosie O'Donnell. These are some of the biggest mooses the world has ever seen, and we handled them like nothing. I said, Justin, do we have a deal? No tariffs, no soy if you don't close the border. He said, sir, you've got yourself a deal, and we may very well add Canada, too, at the end of the day. They may become our 51st state if they don't play ball. But for now, we have a deal. And Justin Trudeau returned back to Canada, sat down, took a nice leak, and went to bed. It's the art of the deal at work. We are making America great again, believe me.
Yeah. Unfortunately, apparently that deal fell apart, although I do like the idea of demanding that the plural of moose be mooses.
Yeah, that's good.
Much like renaming the Gulf of Mexico. I do like that. That was Sean Farish, actually, not President Trump. I sometimes get the two confused. But back in the real world, that same soy boy, Justin Trudeau, did have this to say in response to the announcement that Trump would be imposing tariffs on Canada as well as Mexico and China, effective this weekend. Trudeau's response, just choose Canada.
And now is also the time to choose Canada. There are many ways for you to do your part. It might mean checking the labels at the supermarket and picking Canadian-made products. It might mean opting for Canadian rye over Kentucky bourbon.
Oh, no.
Or foregoing Florida orange juice altogether. It might mean changing your summer vacation plans to stay here in Canada and explore the many national and provincial parks, historical sites, and tourist destinations our great country has to offer.
Oh, man. I mean, that guy really does pee sitting down. I mean, hey, I hate to break it to you, Justin, but 40% of Canada's GDP is related to exporting about 3/4 of their exports to the United States. So it's a little bit more severe than just saying, hey, everybody drink Molson Golden.
Bats is coming back, right?
Yeah, that's not going to be enough. Chrystia Freeland, who was a former deputy PM, and now she's running for PM. She's of the same ilk of Trudeau, went on CNN and was, equally simpering and whimpering and pathetic.
Americans have to understand how hurt and, frankly, how furious Canadians are. Our sovereignty is being challenged. And so, yeah, regular Canadians across the country are coming up with ways to stand for Canada, to fight for Canada, to defend Canada, but mostly to say to our American neighbors, guys, just cut it out. Just stop it. This is a terrible idea. And yes, we are going to use all the tools in our toolbox. You mentioned a little bit earlier how the United States depends on China for critical minerals and metals that you need for semiconductors, that you need to build electric vehicles. Well, guess who also produces those? Canada. You depend on us for a lot, and we are happy to work together, but it's got to be a two-way street.
This is a David and Goliath relationship in terms of economic power. And this is not to say there will not be costs imposed by reciprocal tariffs that will not be costs imposed on American consumers, because there will be. But they are completely approaching this the wrong way. The Canadians, as you would expect. By the way, those two knuckleheads that you just heard from are the same people that debanked their own citizens.
Right.
I mean, these are the Freedom Convoy goons, or, you know, they were the goons responding to the Freedom Convoy with authoritarian policies. So, you know, now they're wrapping themselves in the flag because Trump is more than a little upset about the open borders policies, north and south, which is what this is primarily about, that not only have resulted in the incursion of fentanyl both directions and the resultant deaths from fentanyl overdoses, these drug and human traffickers, but also many people will probably be surprised to learn over the last several years, more people have entered this country from the north who are on the terrorist watch list than from the south. In addition to that, the open borders policies in Canada itself that in part jeopardize American national security. The number of people on the terrorist watch list is one thing. There's some 600,000 student visa holders in Canada that Canada has no idea where they are.
Nope. A lot of them from India, too. Yeah.
Just like we have no idea where hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied children are. I mean, it's not like the Biden administration was any better, but the point here is that the open borders policies in North America are coming to an end, and Trump wants participation from our our northern and southern trading partners, doesn't he? And that was the point that J.D. Vance made on Bartiromo over the weekend.
We'll see what happens, but I think, unfortunately, the retaliation has already happened. The problem with this whole idea that they're going to retaliate is they have already been taking advantage of America for decades. The retaliation is Donald Trump saying no more. We're not going to be taken advantage of anymore, and I think it's important the president is doing what he's doing. Now, look, it looks different ways and comes in different forms, whether you're talking about Canada or China or Mexico. We know that Mexico has allowed the facilitation of the illegal drug trade and illegal sex trafficking for years and has done nothing about it. If they want to be a better partner to us, the time starts now. We know the Chinese, of course, have stolen American manufacturing jobs for 30, 40 years, and also that they facilitated the trafficking of illegal fentanyl into Mexico, where the drug cartels then bring it into our country. We are sick of being taken advantage of. We still have, thank God, the biggest economy in the entire world, the best people and the best workers, but the message from President Trump to the entire world is very clear. We are done being taken advantage of.
Jim Iuorio is host of the Future's Edge podcast, special contributor to WirePoints, wirepoints.org, and also proprietor of Branson Palatine. Jim, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, guys.
I mean, I'm not a fan of tariffs as general economic policy, but for the limited purpose of sending a message to those three countries that J.D. Vance just went through, I'm not overly offended.
No, and to keep something in mind, too, I am not convinced at all that Donald Trump is a big fan of tariffs, despite the fact that every time he comes on air, he talks about how he loves the word and loves tariffs. To me, it sounds like a guy who's planning on using those as a cudgel to get people to do what they want. And this was really, really interesting in that when you're going to impose tariffs on China, it's very clear what we want. We want them to drop the tariffs on us, stop pumping in fentanyl, stop stealing our technology. When he all of a sudden announces the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, It's a little more complicated than that, and the goals are a little less clearly defined. And that's one of the reasons that the market has reacted the way it has overnight, which, by the way, is not a huge reaction. We're down about 1.5% in the S&P. But one thing, you said something before about David and Goliath relationship. All I want people to do is look at what happened to the currency pairs when this news started to surface. The dollar went straight up, and the Canada went straight down. So the market is telling us that, yes, this is David and Goliath relationship, and Canada probably in the end has to test the case. But that guy, I like to limit personal tax, but I suspend that for that Trudeau. When he talks, he sounds like the petty, wimpy guy who is maybe capable of doing something stupid just out of spite. And again, like you said, as soon as he got a taste of authoritarianism a couple of years ago, he jumped into that pretty quickly. So I don't really trust him in this negotiation much more than I trust Trump.
Well, I've kept hearing it all weekend long how, if tariffs do take place, that Canada is going to become a third world country. Can you explain?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to hurt their economy a lot more than it does ours, and it could hurt both economies. But Canada is not; it's not nearly on the same footing economic-wise. I mean, and think of Germany too. Germany is already declining, and if he starts tightening the screws on the EU, it could hurt these economies. Both these economies could go south in a hurry. Canada needs to sell. They sell 4 million barrels a day of of crude. Canada needs that to have their economy going. Now, keep in mind, like in major urban areas in Canada, the real estate market has been booming for years and years. It doesn't take much to change things. Which actually, I want to bring up another point by that too. Is that one thing I don't think Donald Trump completely understands, because his history has always been in real estate, and he doesn't maybe understand general economics in the market as much. I don't mean to sound like a know-it-all, but I think it's once things start to head south, it's difficult to take you out of a tailspin, regardless of even removing what the reason was that pushed you there. I hope that makes sense. I feel like I'm ranting a little bit.
No, I mean, it absolutely does make sense, and all you have to do is look at Smoot-Hawley in the 30s and how that accelerated the Great Depression. And extended it. I mean, arguably. I mean, don't listen to me on it. Read Milton Friedman's scholarship on it if you're skeptical. But that's why I say here. I know the Wall Street Journal opined, with the sort of dumbest trade war ever. This makes no sense. There's no reason for this. But I disagree. I do think you need to impose at least short-term costs to show seriousness and severity on people who are compromising your national security. And in the case of those three countries, the evidence is overwhelming.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that, too. Forgive me for me having some trepidation, because I do see a stock market that's a little bit stretched.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, if that cracks and all of a sudden people start heading for the exits, it could cause us pain, which, by the way, I've been saying for 3 months that 2025 is going to be a rocky road. You don't make a transition from what we had before to what we're going to have in the future without it being somewhat inelegant. And I think markets are going to have a difficult time, too. It's hard to get really a risk appetite when you don't know where the next shoes are up. Even Jerome Powell said that at the presser. He said, we got to figure out what the economic policy is going to be before we know how we can react to it. And that's a metaphor for really all of us. You got to know, like, you're going to buy, if this is going to go on for 2 months, are you going to buy the auto manufacturers? Well, no, because they're not going to make money if this is going on for months and months.
But I mean, but here's the thing. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm in 100% alignment, but it comes back to this idea that we always talk about in Econ 101, that we live in a world of trade-offs. Well, policy trade-offs too. And for Freeland to talk about their sovereignty is being threatened. No, actually, it's our sovereignty that's being threatened by your policies, and that's what we're reestablishing. And sometimes to reestablish your sovereignty, if you've got allies that are not behaving in an allied fashion, you have to be willing to suffer some short-term economic costs, and that's something that the American people have to be leveled with about. But yeah, they're trade-offs, because this will have an impact at minimum on the margins.
So sure. So we then have our job cut off, because the question becomes: is the American people, are they forward-thinking enough to know that the short-term pain they're going to be feeling? Now, it's easy for us to say on this call, but there's a lot of people out there on the margins who are living paycheck to paycheck, and it might be difficult for them. So then how will they vote in 2 years at the midterm? Because if you blow this, like you said, Thomas Sowell, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. And so this is one of the things I worry about. But to your point, Yes, yeah, we have to do these things if we want to get to the place that Donald Trump told us we could get. It doesn't take 3 months; it takes a year and a half to get us going again. And it's all I'm saying is it's going to be a little bit rocky, but I do think it's probably the right way to go. To your point.
Jim Iuorio is host of the Future's Edge podcast. He's also a special contributor to wirepoints.org, and he is the proprietor of Brandt's Restaurant in Palatine. Jim, thank you as always.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories.